All right, so we're back for another deep dive, and today it looks like it's all about opinion essays.
Yeah, looks like we've got quite the spec here, huh? Someone's ready to make their voice heard.
Definitely. And they're trying to do it, uh, well, fast.
120 words, 15 minutes. Yeah, this can be a good one. Opinion essays on the fly.
15 minutes. Whoa, that's not a lot of time. That's got to be tough.
Yeah, but hey, that's what we do here, right? Deep dive into it, figure out how to write an awesome opinion essay, even when you're, under pressure like that.
Okay, so looking at this, it looks like, well, this guide jumps right into the classic structure thing, right? Intro, body, conclusion. Nothing new there, really.
Yeah, you gotta have that. Always gotta have that. Especially when you're working with, a word count that low, 120 words, you really can't waste any space, right?
Makes sense. Okay, but why is that so important, the structure, when you're on the clock like that?
Well, think of it like this. You've only got so many words to make your point. You can't be rambling on about, off on tangents or anything. Got to be really clear and organized so the reader, can follow you, especially when you're under pressure like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's like having a blueprint, right? This keeps you on track.
Exactly.
Okay, so then they talk about the introduction, and I like how they give you those phrases like, in my opinion, or I believe, like they're just getting right to it.
Yeah, you want the reader to know exactly where you stand from the get-go, right? No time to be beating around the bush.
Yeah, no time for subtlety when you got 15 minutes. You just
Yeah.
gotta say it.
And clarity is key, right? Especially with such limited space, you want to make sure there's no ambiguity. You want the reader to know exactly what you're trying to say right off the bat.
So no burying the lead here.
Yeah.
Okay, then let's talk body paragraphs. I mean, the guide recommends 3 paragraphs, each with a specific argument. But it's not just about stating your point, is it?
No, 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 not at all. You got to go deeper than that, right? It's about explaining why you think what you think, and then backing it up with a real world example.
So it's not just saying like, I don't know, I think school uniforms are a good idea.
Mm.
It's more like school uniforms are a good idea because,
Mm.
and then giving the reason and an example.
Exactly. So, for example, like school uniforms are good because they, promote a sense of unity and equality among students, just like a sports team wears the same uniform to represent a shared goal.
Okay, I like that. Makes you think beyond just your own opinion. And then the example, it's got to be real, right?
Of course, yeah, a real world example, something people can connect with, makes your argument more convincing.
Because anyone can just say something, but the example, that's what brings it to life.
Totally. It helps the reader really understand what you're trying to convey. It makes it relatable, memorable.
It's like painting a picture in the reader's mind, right?
Oh.
Instead of just talking about it abstracted.
I like that, yeah. You're painting a picture with your words, basically.
Okay, cool. So we've got our intro, we've got our arguments, but then the guide also emphasizes using transition words and phrases.
Yeah.
Like first, additionally, for example. Therefore.
It's all about making the essay flow well, right?
Absolutely. You don't want it to sound choppy. You want the reader to be able to follow your train of thought easily.
Because you don't want it to sound like a robot's writing it.
Right, exactly.
You want it to sound natural, like you're just, having a conversation.
And those transition words, they help with that. They help connect the ideas together so it reads more smoothly.
They're like little bridges between your ideas.
All right, so let's move on to something I know a lot of people struggle with.
Time management. I mean, 15 minutes to write an essay, that's a real crunch.
It is, but this guide, it actually gives you a pretty good breakdown of how to use that time wisely.
Yeah.
2 minutes for planning, 10 for writing, 3 for reviewing. Sounds crazy, right? Like, who has time to plan when you're already under so much pressure? Seriously. 2 minutes to plan. I mean, it just seems like you'd be wasting time, right? But I'm guessing there's a reason for it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Think about it like this, If you just start writing without any kind of plan, you're more likely to go off track or get stuck or forget important points. But if you take those 2 minutes to just jot down some ideas, get organized, then when you actually start writing, it'll flow much more smoothly.
It's like packing a suitcase, right? If you just start throwing things in randomly, you're going to end up with a mess and probably forget something important.
Exactly. But if you take a little bit of time to plan it out, make a list, then you can pack everything you need and nothing more. Makes the whole process a lot more efficient.
Okay, I like that analogy. So those 2 minutes are really about making a roadmap for your essay.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy, just a few bullet points, key arguments, maybe some examples you want to use. That's all you need.
Okay, so it's like creating an outline in your head, but on paper.
Pretty much, yeah. And trust me, those 2 minutes will save you so much time and stress in the long run.
Okay, I'm starting to see the light here.
Good, good.
So we've got our plan, We've got our intro, we've got our body paragraphs with transitions. Now it's time to actually write the thing, and we only have 10 minutes left.
Right, so you got to be efficient. And that's where those transitions we were talking about come in handy again.
Oh, yeah, I could see how that would speed things up.
Yeah, if you've already got those phrases memorized, you don't have to waste time thinking about how to connect your ideas.
It's like having a cheat sheet for good writing.
Exactly. And another tip, don't be afraid to use simple language. You don't have time to be searching for the perfect word or crafting elaborate sentences. Just get your point across in a clear and concise way.
Less is more, right?
Absolutely.
And what about writer's block? I mean, what if you just get stuck?
Refer back to your plan. That's what it's there for. It'll help you refocus and get back on track.
Like a lifeline, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And don't be afraid to just skip over a sentence if you're struggling with it. You can always come back to it later during the review phase.
So just keep moving forward.
Exactly. And speaking of practice, I love how this guide gives you a ton of sample prompts to work with.
Yeah, I saw that. It's like they've thought of everything, technology, environment, education, all sorts of stuff. And they give you examples of good essays, too, at different levels.
Yeah, that's super helpful to see what a good essay actually looks like, at different levels of proficiency.
Yeah, because you might think you're writing a great essay, but then you see an example and you're like, oh, okay, I've got some work to do.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Structure, arguments, examples, time management. I'm starting to feel a lot more confident about this whole 15-minute essay thing.
Me too. But we're just getting started. There's a lot more to uncover in this guide, especially when it comes to those different proficiency levels and what sets them apart.
I'm ready for more. Well, let's take a quick break and then we'll dive even deeper into this whole essay writing thing.
Sounds good to me.
All right, so we're back and ready to tackle those proficiency levels head on. See what separates a good essay from a great one.
Right, because we've talked about the basics, the building blocks, but now it's time to see how those pieces actually fit together in a real essay.
Yeah, because it's one thing to know the rules, but it's another thing to actually apply them, right?
Totally. And this guide, it actually does a really good job of showing you those differences, Like they've got examples of essays at different levels so you can really see what they mean.
Okay, so let's start at the top. The excellent essays. What makes them stand out?
Well, everything just clicks, The ideas flow smoothly, the arguments are clear and well supported, the examples are relevant and specific, there's no ambiguity, no confusion.
So it's like the writing itself is just really strong, like grammatically and stuff?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. The vocabulary is sophisticated, the sentences are well structured, the tone is persuasive. You can tell the writer has a strong command of the language.
It's like the difference between, someone who's just learning to play an instrument or a professional musician.
Exactly. They both might be playing the same notes, but the professional, they just bring something extra to it,
Nuance and artistry, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so what does an excellent essay on this topic look like? Can we see an example?
Sure. So they give an example about technology and education, and the excellent essay goes like this. The use of technology in education is essential for students. First, it facilitates access to quick and accurate information, which enhances learning. For example, platforms like Google allow students to research complex topics in minutes. Additionally, it makes classes more interactive. For example, applications like Kahoot motivate students to participate more actively. Finally, it reduces environmental impact by digitizing assignments. For these reasons, it is vital to implement technology in all schools.
Whoa. Okay, yeah, that's impressive. I can see why that's considered excellent. It's just well-written,
Right. It hits all the marks, clear arguments, strong examples, smooth flow.
Like a symphony of words, basically. Okay, now let's take a step down to the good essays. What's the difference?
Well, a good essay still meets the requirements, The ideas are organized, the grammar is generally good, but maybe the connections between the ideas aren't as smooth or the examples aren't as specific.
So it's like the foundation is there, but it needs a little bit of work, some polishing.
Yeah, exactly. Like maybe the vocabulary is a little basic or the sentences are a bit repetitive. It's good, but it could be better.
I see. Like it's missing that extra something special, to really make it stand out.
Right.
Okay, let's hear an example of a good essay.
Okay, so this one also tackles the technology topic, and it goes like this. Technology in education is important because it helps students learn faster. For example, students use Google to find information. Additionally, it makes classes more interesting with applications like Kahoots. However, not all students have access to devices. Despite that, technology has many advantages for learning.
Okay, yeah, I can see how that's good. Like, it's not bad, but it's definitely not as polished as the excellent one.
Right. The ideas are there, but they could be developed a little bit more.
All right, so now we're moving on to the adequate essays. What are we looking at here?
All right, so with adequate, the essay is starting to show some cracks. The organization might be a little weak, the arguments might not be fully developed, and the grammar might have some errors.
So it's still understandable, but it's just not that great, basically.
Yeah, and the examples might be kind of vague or not really relevant to the argument.
It's like a house that's, well, structurally sound, but needs a fresh coat of paint and maybe some repairs here and there.
Exactly. It's functional, but not very pretty.
Got it. Can we hear an adequate example?
Sure, so this one says, technology is good in school. It helps with homework. For example, you can look up things on the internet. Also, some people use applications to study. But sometimes there's no internet, and it's difficult. Technology can be good if everyone uses it.
Yeah, I can see how that's considered adequate. Like it's on the right track, but it needs a lot of work.
Exactly. A lot of potential, but needs some guidance.
All right, and then we've got the last level, the one nobody wants to be in. Insufficient.
Yeah, this is where things really start to fall apart.
So what does an insufficient essay look like?
Well, the ideas are all over the place, the grammar is probably pretty bad, the vocabulary is limited, and the overall essay just lacks coherence.
So it's like reading it is just a painful experience, basically.
Pretty much, yeah. It's hard to follow the writer's train of thought, the arguments are weak or non-existent, and the whole thing just feels incomplete.
It's like a building that's like half built and falling apart at the same time.
I like that analogy. Yeah, it's not a good situation.
Can we see an example of this train wreck?
Brace yourself. Here it is. Technology is good for studying. It helps students do homework, sometimes use Google. It's important for school. Computers are good.
Ouch. Yeah, I see why that's insufficient. It's basically just a bunch of random sentences about technology.
Right. It's like the writer just threw a bunch of words on the page and hoped for the best.
Okay, so we've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of essay writing.
The whole spectrum.
This has been really eye-opening to see how those different levels actually play out in real essays.
Right. And hopefully it'll help people understand where they stand and what they need to work on.
Totally. So we've got the structure down, the arguments, the examples, even the time management.
Yeah.
But there's still more to this guide, right?
Yeah.
More secrets to unlock.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It also gives you specific tips on how to craft those arguments quickly and effectively. You know, how to make every word count when you're under pressure.
Okay, well, let's not waste any more time then. Let's dive into those tips and see what other gems we can uncover.
This sounds good to me.
All right, so we're back and ready to dig into those tips for crafting arguments under pressure. You know, got to make every word count when you only have 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's all about being efficient, right? And this guide, it really stresses the importance of brainstorming, even when you're short on time. It might seem counterintuitive, but taking a moment to just gather your thoughts can actually save you time in the long run.
Okay, so how do they recommend doing that? Like, what's the best way to brainstorm when you're, on the clock like that?
Well, they have this one prompt that I really like. It's just, why do I believe this? Like, really force yourself to articulate the reasons behind your opinion.
I could see how that would be helpful just to get those ideas flowing,
Yeah.
before you even start writing.
Exactly. And once you have those reasons, then you can start fleshing them out with details and examples. That's what really turns a simple statement into a convincing argument.
So it's not enough to just say, I believe this. You got to say, I believe this because.
Right. And the guide actually provides a really helpful formula for this. Reason, detail, example. It's like a recipe for a strong argument.
Okay, I'm listening. Break it down for me.
All right, so first, you state your reason, the why behind your belief. Then you give a detail that explains that reason a little bit more, adds some depth to it, and finally you provide a specific example that illustrates your point, makes it real for the reader.
So it's like you're not just making a claim, you're actually backing it up with evidence.
Exactly. And to see it in action, let's go back to that technology and education example, right? Let's say your reason is technology helps students learn faster.
Okay, I like it. So how would we apply this formula to that?
So, reason. Technology helps students learn faster. Detail. This is because they can access information instantly and have a wealth of resources at their fingertips. An example. For example, students can use online dictionaries and encyclopedias to clarify concepts or explore new topics in depth.
Ooh, I like it. It's concise, but it gets the point across. And it's convincing. It's not just a random statement, it's an actual argument.
Right. And see how we use that transition word, for example. That's another key element, making sure those transitions are smooth and logical.
They're like the glue that holds the whole essay together, right?
Okay, so besides this formula, are there any other tips for, coming up with those arguments quickly?
Well, the guide emphasizes memorizing those key phrases, especially the transition words. If you have those already in your head, you don't have to waste time thinking about them while you're writing.
It's like having a toolbox full of ready-made parts, right? You just
Yeah.
grab what you need and put it together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we've got our arguments all figured out. We've written our essay, and we've got 3 minutes left for review. What do we do with that time?
Well, I mean, obviously you got to check for typos and stuff, right? Make sure everything's grammatically correct.
Yeah, that's the first thing, definitely. You don't want any silly mistakes to distract from your brilliant ideas. But it's more than just proofreading, right?
Right. You also want to take a look at your arguments, make sure they're clear and well supported. Do your examples actually make sense? Do they connect back to your main point?
So it's like one last chance to make sure everything is logical and convincing.
Exactly. And another great tip is to read your essay out loud, even if it's just whispering to yourself. This can help you catch any awkward phrasing or sentences that just don't sound right.
Oh, yeah, I do that all the time.
Mhm.
Sometimes I read something I've written and it just sounds, I don't know, clunky or something.
Right, and reading it out loud helps you catch those things. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've explored the structure, the arguments, the examples, the time management, the different proficiency levels, and we've even touched on some tips for writing under pressure.
I feel like I've learned a lot, actually. I'm ready to write a 15-minute masterpiece.
That's the spirit. Remember, practice makes perfect. The more you write, the better you'll get at it. And who knows, maybe one day you'll be writing those excellent essays, the ones that make us all say, wow.
Well, thanks to this guide, I think we're all one step closer to achieving that goal. So to everyone out there who's ever felt intimidated by the thought of writing an essay, especially a timed one, remember, you've got this. With the right tools and techniques, you can make your voice heard, even when the pressure is on.
And as a final thought, all those tips and strategies we talked about today, they don't just apply to essays. Think about how you can use them in other areas of your life, like how can you make your arguments more persuasive in everyday conversations? How can you be more efficient with your time when you're working on a project? There's a lot to think about there.
Absolutely. It's all about taking those skills and applying them in different contexts, That's what real learning is all about.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So until next time, keep writing, keep learning, and keep those arguments sharp.
And we'll be back soon with another deep dive into, well, who knows what, but it's going to be good, that's for sure.